Wonderful to be here. First of all, huge thanks to the organizers of the summit. I'm Maya Sherman. I am an AI expert and project co-lead in the Global Partnership on Artificial Intelligence. I'm joined today by Ms. Caitlin Bob, which is a project manager in GPAI and part of our support center group, and Dr. Shadrach, co-leading with me the project. We'll be presenting a different session today. The point is, of course, to highlight some of the milestones we've achieved in the project we're running in India, but more importantly, to shed some light on the broad rationale behind it. As you can see, we have quite different themes in the title, covering both AI literacy, climate, and intersectionality. And the point is to show some of the non-technological aspects of AI and the way that some traditional practices shape the new future of work and the way that we are trying to cultivate some of these professions using digital innovation. So briefly, we'll cover different themes. The point is to showcase a bit of the project rationale behind some ethical theories. I guess as an ethicist, I'm a bit biased and wanted to have some of the ethical disciplines touching a bit on the very interesting and sometimes ambiguous connection between climate, gender, and artificial intelligence, and speaking a bit about the Indian angle, and specifically more on South Asia, a bit on the duality, why it's not as smooth compared to other disciplines. And then my wonderful colleagues will share some light into the current project and the way that we're delivering it in India. And then finalizing with the global perspective on the work of the Future of Work Committee in GPAI. This is a very exciting year for us, I would say, the project co-lead. This is the first time we are running the project in India, initiated by Dr. Shadrach, and especially under the Indian presidency. This has been a very special milestone for us as well, as we are navigating through the project, of course, under the tremendous support of the GPAI and the support systems in Paris and Montreal. Briefly speaking, there have been different non-technological events happening, I would say, in the recent few years, as from pandemics, the increase in disinformation, deepfake, wars, climate misinformation, conflicts and wars. And the interesting part, in many ways, is the fact that this non-technological affairs and incidents shaped a very interesting collective concept of innovation. Sometimes for bad. I mean, not all actors in the AI space have used it for positive purposes, as we are all aware. But in many ways, we have seen a very interesting increase in the AI for Good projects. As you can also see in the summits and generally in the focus of GPAI and other leading organizations in the field of responsible AI, we are seeing more and more interest and focus on how we can benefit AI for good, how we can harness the potential. Sometimes it comes at different obstacles, but also the part, of course, is to lead to impact and trying to see how we can use AI for different purposes than what was originally intended to, in a way. So just as kind of a brief, I would say, intro, there are different companies and data sets showing how meaningful AI is becoming. We are seeing this in the summit, we're seeing this in different sessions. The point is, and this is something very interesting that Gartner brought up, I would say, and it's the fact that AI dominance and sovereignty is more likely to become a very strong factor determining the strengths of countries. So we've seen, of course, the spread of AI going everywhere, but the fact that this can actually be a game changer when it comes to international relations, the dynamics between countries, this is something that is, I would say in my view, is pretty novel, interesting, and makes the entire discussion on AI not as technological, actually more geopolitical, more social in a way. And this is an interesting conception that is relevant, of course, for discussion today. Briefly speaking, we are speaking, of course, on the climate sector, and specifically in the Indian context, we are seeing an acceleration of AgriTech solutions based on AI, which is fantastic, because when we are thinking of it, there are so many outputs that AI can do that facilitate the use of agricultural services and solutions today, can help the farmers. There are different outputs, and today, of course, the session is not about AgriTech. It's mainly to give short overview. But we're already seeing this. We are seeing pioneering solutions on intelligence spraying and how we can actually increase weather intelligence and disease diagnosis of different agricultural outputs. But the thing is, and this is something that we would like to speak more about, is the importance of intersectionality in this space. So on the most simplistic way, when we're thinking on AI in agriculture, it can, of course, increase the efficiency. It almost seems as an intuitive connection. But there are some theories and understandings behind that can highlight different aspects to this. And when we are thinking of the ethical theory of intersectionality, we are speaking about the fact that each of us as humans, we have different sociocultural attributes, characteristics that define us. And the thing is, the combination of them create different scale of privilege, but also of discrimination. And this is incredibly important when we are speaking on cross-cultural and incredibly diverse continents as India and Asia, sorry, subcontinents, I guess sometimes because of the size I get confused sometimes. But it's incredibly important because when we are thinking on AI, the delivery becomes different. So for us, when we were talking about the project and we're initiating it, we had actually a lot of non-technological consideration to take into discussion just because of the very strong, diverse nature of the informal sector in the country and generally of the region. So if we are speaking just briefly on the informal sector in India, we're speaking on more than 90%. And there are, of course, different studies, different evidence into it. Some of the key issues, some of the things that need to be taken into consideration. And for us, and especially as I was very grateful to join Dr. Shadrach in the initial discussions on the project, we kept on talking on the importance of it, meaning an AI project different than other places in India has to have this very interesting sociocultural consideration, making the technological implementation different than in other places. For good and bad. There are, of course, fantastic opportunities coming with it. But there are some very interesting aspects that we need to take into consideration. And especially here, when we are speaking on intersectionality on its broadest lens, we do need to understand that this intersection of gender, ethnicity, work, the formality of the sector, all have a stake when it comes to the delivery. And specifically, I would say in the South Asian context, and we've seen this quite substantially after COVID-19, we have seen the harm to marginalized communities. So when it comes to implementing any tech-related project, these things come much more into the place. I came to Delhi and relocated a few months ago, and I'm working in the waste management space, mainly on digital transformation. And in the beginning, one of the biggest obstacles was to trying to see how we're actually making the female waste workers much more considered. How are they part of the discussion, especially when we're speaking on technology or any other item. And this is a very strong notion that has been leading us when we're planning this project, trying to see how we can understand the different features of the project and how we can plan the roadmap, how we can actually deliver, plan responsible AI services, accounting for all the different sociocultural factors of the Indian culture and society, which of course are incredibly diverse, making this project much more scalable in other places. Importantly to say, there is a dual role for AI. It's clear, of course, we are all here for the AI for Good and the wonderful summit and the very strong outputs that AI can provide for both the informal and formal economy. We do need to understand that AI can be used for ambiguous purposes in a way. And I brought you two very interesting examples. One of them actually produced by Gemini. And one of the biggest critiques that we've seen on how AI actually reshapes history. And the fact that today when we are able to use certain outputs and when we're trying to ask the machine, give me some data on previous historical events, history might change according to AI. And that's an interesting notion that is clearly discussed now as we're seeing more and more generative AI engines being developed. And this was one of the biggest critiques on Gemini in a way, especially the initial outputs, as we were seeing non-historical outputs. It's almost a new human reality, and which brings to a much more interesting philosophical discussion on what role do we want to give the AI when it comes to defining how history will look like going forward. And I want to say that even, I guess, initially the answer will be we need to be truthful for historical events and generally. There are also some very interesting examples. And if we're going to the picture on the, I guess it's on my right and on your left, there had been a fantastic marketing commercial that was able to replace the characters of some of the leading soccer players, males, with women. And it was mainly to increase awareness and show that also females can be part of the game. And that's, by the way, not realistic. This is, of course, AI-driven. But it also shows the importance, meaning AI can also create some interesting narratives in our history. It can create a new reality to aspire for. The thing is, of course, we also need to understand the limits of it. And the way going forward, and this is clearly the, I would say, the big concept for us, I would say, in GPAI, and broadly for most AI ethicists, is to try and promote much more human-machine teaming. How we can increase the awareness and literacy to make sure that everyone understands what AI is, understand the limitations, the scope of actions. That's what we're trying to do also with the project in GPAI and the other project at the Future of Work Committee. Leading us to this very interesting world that has been discussed substantially in everything connected to the ethics of AI and generally the governance of it. And is the fact that we have a very interesting and new workforce. We have different skills. Clearly across countries, this varies, meaning, and that's probably the more interesting part of it, what we're currently seeing is, and especially in the Future of Work Committee, we're seeing this quite a lot, every region shows a different perspective to how the future of work will look like. So we are working, again, India, South Asia. We have some interesting notions to what professions we're trying to protect, in a way. This is completely different than the projects we're having in Latin America, in Europe. And this shows also the very strong sociocultural nature and character of AI delivery in the future of work. So we are part of the Future of Work group. Of course, my colleagues will soon speak a bit more on the committee, the different projects, the geographical scope of it. And this is briefly about our project. Dr. Shadrach, would you like to present?
Thank you, Maya, and thank you, colleagues Tanvi and Kushal, for including this particular session as part of this summit. We are really elated. Thank you so much. And I'm also joined by Kanishk, my colleague who is out there, who's been a part of our project. Thank you for the introduction and bringing the larger landscape of intersectionality in the AI landscape. So which one I press?
This
one. Okay, so can we bring back the presentation, please? How do we go back?
is a longer press.
How do we go back?
Another one?
I think this is fine. Yeah. Okay, so I'm likely to explain the project that we have undertaken. This project actually was born out of one of the workshops of GPAI that happened in Montreal sometimes last year. where a lot of the working groups that met together highlighted and flagged the need for AI literacy, generic literacy on AI amongst all sorts of stakeholders, and we picked up that idea from there, and we said let's look at the informal sector, and I think which is what Maya was mentioning earlier. In the context of India, 50% of the Indian economy is led by the informal sector, and the informal sector consists of 85% of the labor force, of which majority of women. So most of the skilling programs around the world when it comes to AI, machine learning and data literacy and so on aim at a particular target group, and seldom we look at the informal sector workers as the ones who would also be affected by the phenomenon of AI. So that's how this project was born. And what did we note as the problem? The problem has been billions of workers around the world are likely to be affected by the introduction of AI, and the lack of understanding of AI infused workplace practices are likely to be a major cause of worry, because many of them are not prepared, and it's just that they will lose their jobs and be kicked out of the workforce. So what do we do with regard to billions of such people? Now, a section of large industries, and if we take the example of India, the large scale industries are prepared to some extent to retrain and reskill the workers. But when it comes to the SMEs, although there is a notion that there is AI for SMEs, it's largely for the owners. But when it comes to the workers, it becomes a little fragile. And as was mentioned, 90% of the informal sector workers are mini and micro enterprises. In some cases, single account holders, some cases family businesses. How do we deal with them? And the informality is very stubborn in South Asia in particular. So the target group in this particular context that we have in mind are the mini and micro enterprises. As I mentioned, billions of dollars are invested in AI future skills, skilling workforce, largely in the formal sector. When it comes to the informal sector, there is hardly any program that we see. And the cost of lack of AI literacy is going to cost not just unemployment in the informal sector, but will have a dent on the 50% of the economy which is sustained by the informal sector. So it's going to be a spiraling of unemployment and unrest and so on, because those who are in the economy are likely to be kicked out, and unless they pick up additional skills to be in the formal system. So we have come up with the kind of a solution which is very generic, very basic, a very generic AI literacy program that can orientate millions of informal sector workers. And to begin with, we are focusing on the farm workers. But as mentioned by Maya, my colleague earlier, informal sector workers would include a variety of people, including the waste workers, that waste management workers that she was referring to earlier. And if we talk to the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment in our own country, there is a huge target among the PM Daksh program. There is a huge target of people who need to be skilled over a period of time from their very informal practice to the newer automated practice that is likely to affect their professional life, the earning ability and so on. So the idea was to come up with a very generic learning program released as an open source, open education resource, under one of the Creative Commons best licenses. There are 6 different licenses under Creative Commons, but by SA 4.0, what they call, is something that that would enable other communities to adapt, translate, replicate, and scale up, reuse, redistribute, what they call. And we thought, unlike the conventional MOOCs or the micro credentials and others that we are familiar with, which even in the context of India, you see Swayam, Swayam Plus, the Diksha portal, which works for the teachers, the Skill India Digital Hub, which is again for the formal sector workers within the industry. But when it comes to the informal sector workers, the methodology has to be different. We thought it would be minuscule, bite-sized learning modules which would be sent to them in feature phones, which would be more of experiential based understanding, and that's how we thought we would be able to provide this learning program for the millions of informal sector workers. And this model we thought would be not only easy, navigable and accessible by the target group, but also when it comes to replication, adaptability and adoption in other geographies, it should be easy. So that's what we are looking at. Now the product, as I mentioned, is mobile phone based curriculum in a storytelling format. That's where my colleague Kanishk did a great job in writing a script in a very storytelling, intuitive manner, which is relatable to the target population we are looking at. This is something that we want to provide in vernacular languages. So the product is designed by experts from the global south, keeping the farmers in India in mind to begin with. And we are likely to test this model with among 20,000 farmers in Maharashtra. And we are also hoping that other geographies within India would pilot test it. On the basis of the pilot test, we would come up with a model to basically scale up. So it's quite authentic because it's script based on the advice offered by a reference group that we have put together. Some 20 of them who had come forward, ranging from university professors, IIT professors to grassroots level workers who come together under the reference group to enable us and help us to actually curate the content. Now the benefits is it's simple to use in a blended mode, being pilot tested, which would reveal the usability and the interface, and it's squarely on the awareness of AI. And this is a kind of a partnership effort of GPAI, India, which is represented by my colleague Caitlin, and Commonwealth of Learning, my own organization, with local partners in the Maharashtra Knowledge Corporation Limited and the OIC Yashwant Chavan Maharashtra Open University, who would actually certify. Interestingly, for the first time perhaps, even YCMOU is looking at informal sector workers as their clients, as their learners. So eventually this would become a 1 credit based program for those learners who could bank these credits in the academic bank of credits, which would also enable them to create an APAR ID on and above the Aadhaar ID. They will have an APAR ID, and that APAR ID would be a kind of a solicitor for them to become lifelong learners, because most of the farmers who actually go through any learning program do not bank their credits in the academic bank of credits. So this would also create a career pathway, academic pathway for them, because many of them when they are RPL'd, what they call, when they are recognized for their prior learning, they can all become graduates, although they may be today a farmer who may have dropped out from the school system, but the national education policy allows them to become graduates eventually, and also grow the career ladder, the academic career ladder. So we are likely to look at a scenario where many of them would come into the formal education system. So the two colleagues, Maya and myself, with a reference group, are engaged in this research in terms of designing a minimalist design which would be usable in a feature phone. And we have a timeline, very tight timeline. By September, we should have piloted this program among the 20,000 farmers who should have audited the course and given us the feedback. On the basis of the feedback, we are likely to come up with a scale-up plan which would be made available most probably in the Serbia December event for other geographies to look at and replicate. In summary, we delved into the project milestones which we created, and we created an advisory group. We have held various consultative meetings. We are continually pruning the curriculum, and we are eventually also looking at AI-driven solution, including a solution like Bashini for translating the content and taking to the ground. So that's the core of it. Over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you, Maya and Shadrach, for the presentation up until this moment. So I'll sort of switch gears here a little bit and talk more globally about the Future of Work working group and why I'm sitting next to these two talented experts. So my name is Caitlin, and I'm one of the project managers at the Paris Expert Support Center housed at INRIA. And I would be amiss to not give a shout out to my colleague Edward Havis, who's not here with us today, but who works very hard to help all of the experts on the Future of Work working group get the work done, let's say. So yeah, that historically, the Future of Work working group has been a part of the Paris Expert Support Center. As it stands today, I think the Future of Work working group has transformed itself into one of the working groups that's in the forefront, specifically since the launch of generative AI to the public with ChatGPT about a little over a year and a half ago in November 2022. And then following the Montreal Innovation Workshop in September, they adopted new projects, many of which have a generative AI approach, because of course the future of work will indeed affect, or generative AI will affect the future of work. So it's a working group that also has the most projects, but the smallest amount of experts, which just goes to show that they're a very hardworking group. So thank you once again to all of the experts. And I'm very grateful that we have Maya and Shadrach here today to present our work on this working group. So I'll just take the time to explain a little bit more about the other projects beyond what we've talked about this far. Is it this one? Okay, so here we are with one of the other working group projects called the AI for Fair Work, which is co-led by Funda Ustek Spilda and Callum Kant out of Oxford University. It's a partnership that was set up by INRIA. It has been ongoing for several years now, so it is a project that has had the opportunity to grow over the last few years. As it's described here, in April and May 2023, the team was able to conduct field work in East Africa. Excuse me, studying the conditions of facing workers who annotate the data that is used in the training of AI system. So when we talk about future of work, we're not just talking about how it'll affect jobs, but also how it'll affect data quality and workers who are working on data as well. So this has been a growing concern for the AI for Fair Work project. And I'll go to the next one. Did I just hold it down? Okay. The CAS project, which is actually a joint initiative between the Future of Work working group and the other working group that is based at INRIA, the Paris Expert Support Center, which is the Innovation and Commercialization Working Group. So it's called the CAST project, to design framework for AI-based solutions, co-led by Boris Stolski and Bogmil Kaminski, two Polish experts in the Future of Work working group. The idea of this project is to create and design a framework that will offer support for three fundamental use cases: AI-based product solution, conceptualization and design, identification of responsible AI factors and best practices specific for the product and project, and evaluation of AI-based product and solution from the perspective of responsible AI. And I think it was after the Montreal Innovation Workshop that took place again in September 2023 that we decided to integrate this project into the Innovation and Commercialization Working Group to make it a joint initiative, seeing the impact both not only with the future of work, but also on the side of innovation as well. Empower AI workers. So this is a project that, co-led by Safe Savage, who is based out of Northeastern University and has helped us create a partnership with UNAM, the National University of Mexico, if I'm not mistaken by the name, and Jan Ferguson, who's the scientific director of Laboria, and he is also an expert within the Future of Work working group, of course, also focusing on generative AI and how it's transforming workplaces. The project aims to support and empower workers thanks to AI tools created by the created and for the workshops. So the various labs have been set up, including the Laboria that Jan is working on. Is that it?
I think so.
Okay. Actually, I'll just briefly go through two more. I'm not sure. I think they somehow got cut out. So there's one more on generative AI and the future of work dialogue, going on the technical advancements of generative AI and the recent studies that have indicated the potential to automate human work activities. So the idea is to collect evidence and highlight the most emerging impacts of generative AI on various types of workers in different sectors. And then our last one, which is co-led by, or just led by Fernando Schwick, and we're working with the University of Buenos Aires, the project being impact of generative AI models in the labor market in South America. In the last year or so, the working group has had a particular focus in South America and the labor market at large. The expected results of the project are to contribute research to have a greater understanding of the societal implications of AI, and to inform discussions on how to ensure its benefits and to make sure it's widespread and inclusive. So now I'll hand it back to Maya and Shadrach to close it up.
Sure. We'll have some concluding remarks. In many ways, the goal of this session today was to highlight AI, but from a different angle. We have a very strong rationale and belief in this kind of projects. And we are very grateful to, first of all, have the Indian presidency this year, as we believe in the very strong implementation that this kind of project can take in India and hopefully going to other continents. This is, I would say, firstly, thanks to the very strong digital saturation in the country, but also due to the fact that there is such, and I would say this perhaps as a foreigner who relocated to India mainly because of this reason, and it's to see the very strong social understanding and perception of what innovation is supposed to be. Understanding that there is such a big universe outside of AI and outside of the digital innovation, and there's such a big need to accommodate all different kinds of populations. We are currently in fascinating times, I think, for any AI practitioner. Almost unprecedented in a way. I remember myself in my master thesis in Oxford as I was writing, and it seems a bit, I would say back then, it was 3 years ago, and it was a bit uncertain where AI will go. It was a mini crisis. I was in the UK back then. And today what we're saying with generative AI is that it's a whole new world that has been opened up. And I would say that, I guess, and of course Dr. Shadrach will add as well, but seeing the way that we're able to initiate this kind of project, think of AI differently, but more than anything, remember that AI is to serve the human component, rather the other way around. This is the goal behind the project we are currently advancing. This is, of course, a very important time for this kind of initiatives. We'll be very keen to hear of any potential stakeholders interested in the project. Of course, the hope is to scale up geographically, but there is so much to do here. Of course, we aim the pilot to start in India, but there are so many different states. The agricultural landscape was also quite varied, and we hope to spread as much as we can. And yes, that's on my side. Dr. Shadrach, any concluding remarks?
Nothing much, but just to highlight that, under GPAI, there's only one project that deals with India, and this is the one that we are privileged to lead. And incidentally, the project in India is all about people who are excluded from the mainstream. So that's about it.
So thank you so much for the listening, and of course we are available for any questions or inquiries you might have. Of course.
To hear what all of us are doing, because at one point of time I thought after GPAI we are not taking it further for addressing core societal concerns. Anyway, so coming back to a very pertinent question that was assailing my mind to Dr. Shadrach is, when you said we're designing the basic literacy program for farmers, you started with factory workers, if I'm not wrong, and then somewhere down the line I heard the word farmers. So I want to ask you, did you talk to farmers themselves, that what are their training need analysis, and how are you sure that while giving them training on AI basics, we are actually empowering them? Because what I loved in the whole discussion was that you're doing it on a feature phone and vernacular language and making it as a storytelling mode. But is it going to be another podcast on their phone to increase their societal worth? Or is it actually going to tangibly affect or mainstream them in the AI world? Because I think the new form of divide, which we've been saying since yesterday, is AI divide and not digital divide. So a lot of questions together are coming in my mind. So I just bullet them again. The first one, was any training need analysis done with farmers themselves before you design that capsule? Number two, how are you so sure that the effort that you're working on and with is going to actually tangibly affect future of work for farmers? Because you are FOW, and this is looking like a digital literacy program to just reassure them, look, this is not alien to even you. So, and maybe in the discussions we can take it later subsequently. Thank you.
Thank you. I think these are very pertinent questions. We started off with AI for factory workers.
Yes.
And we put together, as I mentioned, a reference group. And the reference group actually dismissed the idea of doing this amongst the factory workers. They said either you prioritize the subsector within the larger ecosystem. And they said there are two low-hanging fruits. One is the crafts workers and the farm workers. So then even among the crafts workers, they said, you have to really work hard in terms of demonstrating the effects. And largely they mentioned that the way that AI has started impacting them is largely in marketing and in design of the products, not so much outside that realm. And 95% of them are not really taking advantage of AI at this point in time, either in designing or in marketing. And we have done quite a few other studies in terms of how AI might affect the manufacturing sector. And in Korea, for instance, already a large proportion of manufacturing has been affected by AI. But in India, again, the SME clusters, there is a group called Foundation for SME Clusters, FMC. They came out and said our studies do not reveal much about AI's impact in the manufacturing sector yet, other than certain glimpses in the automobile sector and so on. So that's how we ended up prioritizing to begin with, although eventually all the factory workers would be affected. To begin with, the low-hanging fruit for us was among the two, crafts workers and farm workers. Farm workers were prioritized. Now with regard to the needs assessment, we haven't done under this project, but we relied upon the needs assessment carried out by our partners, Maharashtra Knowledge Corporation Limited and Yashwant Chavan Maharashtra Open University, who have been working with a large number of Krishi Vigyan Kendras in our country in terms of equipping them in technology-enabled learning practices, literacy and so on. So they came out with the statement that this is indeed important. So if you ask me if there is enough evidence to the need is more anecdotal and based on the partner's gut feeling rather than research from GPAI. So that's something that I need to candidly admit. And just to close the point, when it comes to the delivery mechanisms, we realize that the current model of delivery that's followed in this university is something that we'll bank upon. So the pilot among 20,000 farmers would really tell us whether there is a need, whether there is likely to be an impact, whether there is any further life for this project or not. So we are basically at the moment looking at the timeline between now and September, when we will have implemented this amongst the initial target group. So that's where I stop.
Okay, hi, this is Sivaramakrishnan here. I'm also a GPAI member, but I'm pretty new to this thing. There are other initiatives happening. The Future Workforce, for example, People.ai, Nandan Nilekani's group is working at least some 7 or 8 concurrent projects are going on this future of work, starting from organized sector to unorganized sector. IT Madras Center of Responsible AI is also working on similar initiatives. One such initiative is working with rural areas to get them on board for data mining and data cleansing act, those kind of right. So is there any suggestion like how we can piggyback these initiatives into what we are trying to do and bring all this, a lot of good stuff from an unorganized sector perspective with agriculture and stuff like that, but there are initiatives like AI for doctors, AI for the construction workers, and all the stuff is going on. Is there a way, do you think, what are your suggestions, how to take this forward and integrate them or piggyback them with these initiatives and what we're trying to do? Is there any thought, have you thought about it? Have you come across with this kind of initiatives?
I think it's very important to collaborate and work together across the board. So the experiences that we would be capturing and documenting is something that would help other initiatives as well. But in the long run, we would need to collaborate because we are staring at 800 million people in this very country.
Yes.
800 million people who are likely to be one way or the other affected. Now with the farm sector workers, AI is all around them, in the form of drones to whatnot, the micro sprayers to, there are many applications that they see in their daily life, but they don't realize that this is something that that's likely to go further in their practice. And this is also an opportunity for us to bring back young people into farming, because farming is a feminized sector now. It's all left to women to, particularly when it comes to smallholder farmers. So there are aspects of this effort that would feed into the larger ecosystem. The research that comes out of it would be helpful, but we are pretty sure that all our findings would be made available across the board, whether it's IIT Chennai or Nandan Nilekani's initiatives, or as we speak in the other room, there is this Bharat AI, which is led by Sai Gol, and she's quite interested in using this app in amongst her 5 million farmers that she's working with. So there are quite a lot of, so this is an open source effort.
I agree with you.
Research.
In fact, even 3 days ago from IIT Madras, the Center for Excellence, we did a workshop for future of work for educators. We're trying to look at how we can integrate teachers and the teaching workforce into how they use effectively AI in teaching methods and delivery system and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think when that's how when Maya mentioned about intersectionality, this is one aspect, but there are quite a lot of.
Yep, I agree with you.
So we could impact. This research could basically be
piggyback on. I agree with Maya.
Informative for other efforts as well.
I'll just add that the entire point of GPAI as an organization is the fact that we are taking a multi-stakeholder approach.
Yep.
There are different initiatives, and that's also the reason why we established the advisory board. The advisory boards include entities across sectors, academia, practitioners. We also aware of previous initiatives, and of course, as in most pilots and in any new initiative being tested, we're examining different approaches. But clearly looking forward, as we are planning to scale up this project, we will be leaning towards more collaborations, especially under the guidance of GPAI, as we're trying to see other regions that can be relevant, but specifically here in India, as we're saying that there are different initiatives, there is a very strong market that we can accommodate for, and different challenges across the regions. So yeah, that's the goal. But yeah, any more questions? I've seen your hand.
Yeah, so, okay. So so we are an undergrad students, and we are working as AI research fellows at the Mojo Lab Foundation. So our question was that most of the work that's done, either the products are made or the research is done, is on the conversational AI part, and not on the, like for example, there are still manual scavenging done for the sewage system. So why aren't AI being made for the more difficult, for those tasks, rather than just automating the easier ones that could that are not that difficult? So that was our question.
I think what you are relating to is the 3D phenomenon. The AI is mandatory as a tool for this 3D phenomenon, which stands for dirty, dangerous, and difficult jobs.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to this balancing act between AI and people, this kind of interface, I think we must prioritize, as you say, when it comes to the dirty jobs, difficult jobs, and dangerous jobs. That's where you need AI. And there is a movement to resist AI's invasion into certain areas where jobs will be lost, where livelihoods are highly dependent on those individuals whose skills may be limited today, and they are the only breadwinners. So should AI affect their livelihoods and lives and homes? Rather, in my opinion, as you say, the 3D jobs could be looked into, no doubt.
So that should be prioritized, right?
Of course.
But in these 2 days of conversations, it has been over 24 hours of conversation, but it has been even once key. We have listened about prioritizing AI for these low-level works. It has always been for helping us who are already privileged.
So there you heard about this project. So this is one of those that's looking at the grassroots.
Yeah.
But you know, as mentioned by our colleague there are quite a lot of initiatives that are taking place. Perhaps not everyone is in this room, but in the country there are quite a lot of initiatives that are looking into the variety of problems. And I think the Indian government has made a great beginning in launching the India AI mission, which is likely to be the kind of a platform on which many of us would ride in terms of solving those solutions. So Mozilla Foundation and others can also contribute to the discourse.
Thank you, sir.
To add to what mentioned, like there are AI applications, especially the NLP level applications, wherein voice-enabled services are being offered. They are the ones that will actually empower the last 500 million people, especially in a country like India. Like very often we say that India has 900 million people connected to the internet, but remaining 500 million people who are not yet connected, very often they are not able to, because it's very difficult for them to navigate a website or a portal or download an app or go through a CAPTCHA. They would want a voice enabled service wherein they can talk in their mother tongue, get information about anything just by talking to a phone. So for example, if there is a farmer living in say Bihar or UP, and if he wants to know the price of paddy in the local market, he should be able to speak to his phone or call up a toll free number and say, ask that Agra mein bajre ki कीमत क्या है, what is the price of millets in the Agra market, and if he gets the reply back in his mother tongue, then that would be real empowerment, and all of it will be enabled with AI based technologies wherein unstructured content, voice content mixed in various languages is fed, and then the answer is generated by using generative AI technologies and rendered through voice. So that would really empower people about whom you are talking about. It's not only the privileged lot who are using ChatGPT to play games, but also people who would seek information that's otherwise not available to them through these means. Plus there are multiple other applications similarly, like people who can't go to a specialist doctor or a specialist hospital, if they can use an AI tool to do basic disease diagnosis or to find out what they should do when their child is suffering from diarrhea and how to save lives, that will be really effective. Or farmers who want to just find out, click an image and upload the image of a crop and find out what pesticide they should put. Or how much water they should put in their crop. In fact, there is already an application wherein it advises farmers on their mobile phone based on data coming from soil, moisture content in soil, as also weather data and which crop they are sowing, that how many hours they should run the submersible pump, whether they should run it for 2 hours or whether they should run for 3 hours. So that way they save water, they save on input cost benefit. So many of these AI applications that we need to like kind of scale up and deploy, that would ultimately benefit people at the last mile, people who are right now in the present scheme of things, in the present way, the way the internet is designed, are not able to access online services.
Sorry, I'll just answer the manual scavenging part.
Actually, after you.
So I used to lead Startup India. I just know a little bit about this. So one, manual scavenging is not an AI problem, it's a robotics problem, one. Second, that has been solved by this startup called Bandicoot from Kerala, right? Now, not only is it just a tech problem, it's also a social and a public procurement problem, right? So in terms of solving for that, thankfully somebody from India has done it. We don't see it as much as we would like. I agree, there are some challenges there, but at least in terms of tech, that part is taken care of.
I would also like to add IIT Madras has a HomoSep robot.
I'll just add that Bandicoot robots have been widely implemented in government of UP. They cost, 3 of them cost around rupees 1.13 crore, were launched in January in Prayagraj, then up to Aligarh, then I remember Kanpur, Greater Noida. So it's not that it's not being done, but I totally agree with you, your response. Thank you. We'll start, like we'll scale up.
Your point with regard to scaling it up and trying to make more and more people use it, so that we don't hear news of people losing lives while doing manual scavenging, that is something that we need to aspire for, and that's the level we need to reach to. It might have been used in UP, Prayagraj in a limited way, but we need to move from pilots and proof of concepts to actual scaling it up and deploying it at population scale.
Already there is a startup called Solina's Integrity from IIT Madras, and it has featured into Shark Tank. Let me add that also. And Professor Rajgopal is leading HomoSep Robotics that is also involved into cleaning of sewage. So my yeah.
Thank you for this. Any more questions?
Just one question, Maya. Congratulations for embarking on this mission for empowering 20,000 farmers. So what you show was the whole delivery of the AI module will be on mobile phones. So in between these 3 months of pilot, are you going to bring some human touch to the farmers? Like who will train them? Like are they already very well versed how to operate on mobile phone? Or is it like from one of your partners will be like monthly or fortnightly going to them and doing some group sessions, or it is completely online?
It's in a blended mode. Basically, the Yashwant Chauhan Maharashtra Open University would deliver it partly face to face and partly online.
Thank you.
Especially initially, we are seeing the importance of having an hybrid mode. We do understand that, again, there is a reason why we chose to have the mobile phones, but clearly we do see the importance of having the human element also incorporated. And especially it's the pilot program, and clearly we'll learn more as we're trying to scale this up afterwards.
Good evening, everyone. So my name is Navya, and I'm working as an intern in Indian Institute of Public Administration, IIPA. So my question is, how does the human tendency for anthropomorphism affect interactions with AI systems, and how can AI literacy address this?
So what is the term you used?
So this term means that we are making like AI compatible to human with human feelings, and like we are trying so that it comes at par. So what is the tendency of a human is that they get emotionally attached. So how can AI literacy help them to control that? Because as a psychologist,
I think she is referring
yeah.
engineer, wherein he was talking to that bot and he fell in love with the bot.
Yeah.
So AI, so it's like any other problem. So it's like an addiction. So there will be psychiatrists and there will be psychologists who will be addressing that. No.
It's an interesting angle, and of course we are again we are designing the pilot program, and I believe that Dr. Shadok and I we have seen that there are so many different theories and considerations that we do need to take into consideration. But this is something that I guess we will test. I mean, we're trying still to see what will be the interactions of the farmers with the kind of a new content being introduced. So we would like, first of all, to see and test what will be the adoption, how we can increase it, but of course everything connected to the humanization of AI, the level of attachment, is something that is also a very interesting byproduct that we hope to research. And I think the interesting part is that in many ways it's different across disciplines. Like different disciplines will have a different attachment between the human and the AI. Here specifically, because again, it's more like the informal sector, not always as digitized compared to other professions. So this is something that it will be interesting for us to explore as well and to see the level of it. But yeah, we will have, I believe, more answers as we continue and pilot the program. But thank you for this approach. It's an interesting angle.
I have a question. Yeah. So in my understanding of just coming back to the project, actually, caste becomes a very important factor in the Indian society when it comes to landholding size of farmers, and not just landholding size, but also labor on other people's farm as well. So is that part of intersectionality considered in this study and in the pilot that would be deployed?
I think primarily we have aimed at smallholder farmers and also farmers who have contracted out their own land to the contractors and ended up becoming laborers. So I think you are touching upon a point which is unfortunately true in our society. So empowering them to make them realize that part of the problem is their inability to sustain their farming that's where we see the young people coming back to farming as one way to perhaps sustain the family-based farming. Now what is happening is many of them have simply lent out their land to larger contract farmers and are now employees in their own land. So that's the phenomenon. But hopefully, in the future, there are umpteen problems of this kind. They raised about scavenging, you raised about contract farming. There are quite a lot of problems in society, and I think technology is an enabler as much a disruptor, and we hope that there is a lot of hope emerging out of technology, particularly from AI, and India is a great test bed for all these, solving all these human social problems.
We'll just add that it's a great remark, and this is something that we've been constantly thinking of, because not in all case studies we see this such strong impact of intersectionality, the fact that there are so many different social considerations and factors that can completely revolutionize the way that we're delivering the project. And the thing is specifically because, again, we're speaking about such a diverse group of population. We would like to, first of all, again, the testing approach is to try to see certain pilot programs to understand how we can play with this in a way, trying different considerations, seeing how we can play with some of the factors. But this is something that we're also building as part of the roadmap, understanding that we cannot take all at once. But the interesting thing is that I would say, similar to AI, is the fact that once you change a certain component sometimes in the equation, and then a new output is coming up, and then we are building on that. And that's perhaps part of the goals that we are seeing for this project. So yeah, we'll address it hopefully later on. Thank you.
But I think you've partially and completely answered that. That when you started, you talked about effects of caste, gender, sexuality, etc. So would there be an outcome which is studying all these interplay of factors for AI uptake? Or I think you've partially answered. Or is it just going to be a blinkered approach to just do a POC and come up with FOW recommendations and probably not consider all the intervening parameters that are affecting the uptake of these technology acceptance model?
Yeah, so that's something that, of course, we're discussing on. I'll say briefly, as part of the longer roadmap, yes, we'll be glad to take the more complex case studies. However, we want to be smart as we go, meaning each pilot program will teach us something differently. Different initiatives have been working on this area. We believe that there is much more to learn, especially because some of these implementations are still kind of new. Some of these intersections are not as tested. I mean, of course, there are different programs for AI literacy for farmers, but for female farmers, it's something that we still need to see more data sets and more knowledge on that. So we hope to reach that, but we also want to be able to learn from each pilot and understand what we might need to change, to sensitize, to make sure that we're addressing it in the right way, in a way.
Yeah, a lot of cultural concerns. Yeah. Thank you.
So I think that with that, we will finish. Thank you so much for the questions. Thank you so much for the questions. Again, we are very excited to be working on this project. We believe in its potential. There are some obstacles, but of course we really believe in the opportunities and the work that is possible to be done here. We, of course, will be glad to hear from you, any inputs, connection that you might have as we are aiming to scale up the project. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Shadrach and Ms. Maya and Ms. Caitlin. Thank you for the insightful discussion. We'd also like to thank Shri Abhishek Singh sir, Ministry of Electronics and IT, for joining us in the discussion. Thank you, everyone, for joining in the discussion, and have a great evening.